You may recall I also spoke in support of House Bill 406 recently, and my testimony today is very similar. We support this legislation, especially the ability to sell EV charging services by the kilowatt hour instead of per unit of time in Georgia. We have collaborated closely with multiple stakeholders, including many of you, for the past 2 years on this issue. And although nothing in the Territorial Act prohibits EV charging companies from billing by the kilowatt hour for charging services today, we believe it's important that all stakeholders receive clarity on this point through legislation, as is done in Senate Bill 146. Billing for EV charging services by the kilowatt hour is important to the growing number of EV drivers in Georgia because the size of the battery is measured in kilowatt hours, similar to how the size of an internal combustion engine, or ICE, vehicle's gas tank is measured in gallons. Therefore, clarifying that this service can be billed by the kilowatt hour allows for the growing EV market to be measured similarly to how the ICE market operates today, which is the right thing for both our customers and the future of this industry in Georgia. As an EV charging service provider of last resort, Georgia Power serves less than 3% of the public EV charging market in Georgia. All of Georgia Power's chargers are capable of complying with this proposed legislation, and we look forward to working with Leader Gooch, Chairman Jones, and members of this committee as this bill moves through the legislative process. As this committee is well aware, Georgia's future is strongly connected to the success of the EV industry, and I appreciate your time and attention to the topic. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, we'll open for questions. Nope. Okay. Stephanie, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Next would be Ben Kessler with ChargePoint.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Ben Kessler. I'm the Public Policy Manager for ChargePoint, and appreciate the work of the Joint Committee on Electrification and the work and leadership that the members of the legislature have gotten to get us to this point. We are supportive of SB 146 and certainly appreciate that the state will allow the legalization of kilowatt-hour retail sales for electric vehicle chargers. We see this as a great boost to private investment in the state on the electric vehicle charger infrastructure. We're certainly also appreciative of the adoption of NIST standards in this bill. Our chargers can fully comply with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, so we're glad to see that in as a consumer protection element for this bill. We're encouraged to see that the Georgia Department of Transportation is also looking at different ways to gain road usage revenue. And certainly one of those things that was talked about during the Joint Committee was the vehicle mile traveled tax or pay-as-you-go as the nation and the states move toward that model. We're encouraged to see that Georgia is participating in that. We are concerned with just one part of this bill that the effective tax date is 2025. We would certainly encourage an expansion of time to 2028 to give agriculture just the ability to staff up, have the equipment to inspect and verify these stations to ensure that Georgians and other citizens of the United States who are being taxed this taxation are being charged on an adequate kilowatt hour being received from the station. So those are only things that we have with the bill. Otherwise, we are certainly supportive of where this bill goes and open to any questions from the committee. So appreciate it. Thank you.
You have a question, Representative Gullett.
Hey, thank you. You believe it's going to take 5 years to get Department of Ag up to speed to know how to tax electric vehicles?
Well, I don't think 5 years. I think the problem for it will be the equipment to test these stations. At this current point, there's not any commercially available field testing equipment for DC fast chargers, and that will not be on the market until these NIST standards for DC fast chargers go into effect until 2028. And so we see the years leading up as rule promulgation for this taxation, and then certainly having the ability for agriculture to go out, inspect these stations, verify them, and then have this tax go into effect.
Okay. I think in 2035 is the goal to get rid of gas vehicles. Am I right? Is by President Biden? Is that what he stated? Do you know?
I wouldn't phrase it exactly as such. There is an effort by some states to mandate the sale of new electric vehicles, so not preventing any used gas vehicles in the state.
New vehicles, yes. Right. I think 2028 is a long way away. I don't know that something that we can wait on as these vehicles, my local dealer, they have a ton of electric vehicles that are coming through now, and I think it's something You know, I can appreciate your thoughts on that, but I don't know something that we can wait they're using the roads today. I think we got to figure out a way to you know, from a payment standpoint, especially out of the state. So as they're coming in, so I appreciate that. 2028 seems like a long time though to say to wait in my mind.
I appreciate your thoughts. I would also say that the current effective date of 2025 is not that far off in terms of compliance for the charging stations, as well as the compliance for getting the agriculture up to speed and revenue. So I think we're only looking about less than a year and a half from when this bill passes to effective date.
Okay, Representative Wiedauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Out of curiosity, where is your company based out of?
We're based out of California, but certainly have offices internationally. Our East Coast one is in Greenville, South Carolina.
Thank you.
Okay, you have no more questions. We're going to move on to
Thank you.
the Tesla Representative Louis Massey.
Thank you, Chairman Thomas and Chairman Jones, members of the committee. My name is Louis Massey, and our firm represents Tesla. I want to first thank Senator Gooch and Ben Girard, as Chief of Staff, for all the time that they've spent with us, and also Catherine Russell and the fine staff of the Department of Agriculture. We appreciate a couple of the provisions that Senator Gooch mentioned. One, of course, the kilowatt hour change. Tesla is very much in favor of that, and that would bring Georgia into line with a lot of other states across the country. We also believe the multifamily provision is important, because if we're going to allow homeowners to charge at home without the taxes and regulations, certainly you have to include apartment. We believe you have to include apartment dwellers in that as well. We also appreciate the inclusion of the NIST standards in the bill. And then lastly, appreciate very much the effort to look at delaying this until 2025. If there's a discussion beyond that, it certainly wouldn't hurt our feelings. But we know you guys want to put something in place to make sure that the revenue is coming in to replace the gas tax. And we also eagerly look forward to the results of the GDOT pilot project on miles driven. So thank you very much.
You have one question, Representative Wiedauer.
How are we doing, Mr. Massey?
Doing good.
This weekend I was actually in Athens, finally for once, and there was a bunch of Teslas lined up outside of Best Buy charging. Out of curiosity, do you know how many Teslas you guys currently have in Georgia, roughly?
I do. We just crossed the 32,000 vehicle mark in Georgia, so just over 32,000 Teslas now in the state of Georgia.
One more. How many charging stations do you guys supplied?
Tesla has almost 900 charging stations, and that's half fast charging and half what they call destination chargers, which charge a good bit slower. And that's at about 190 locations all over Georgia, not just Metro, but all over the state.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, one more.
Yeah.
Do you select locations based on, you know, the number of cars in a certain area? Are you trying to spread them throughout the state? I mean, obviously we're talking about different tiers and where some of these charging stations will be encouraged to go. How do you guys select those locations?
I don't know the exact formula for that, Representative Wiedauer, but I do think that they look at registrations and they try to put charging stations in the area where new cars are being registered. If any of you travel on I-16, I'm sure some of you do down to the coast, there's a big bank of 14 supercharging stations in Metter just off the highway there. And every time I go there and back, that it's always almost full every time. So you can see that EVs are taking off, as Senator Gooch referred to earlier, all over the state, and we think that'll continue over the next several years.
I have heard everything's better and better. So
That's right. Correct. Thank you.
So actually, I have one quick question. There's some significant difference between the House bill version and the Senate bill, specifically about displays and I guess remote display. Do you have a preference on that language? Are you indifferent between the two bills? Can you kind of elaborate on that for me real fast?
Well, that could be a loaded question since that was your amendment, I think, that put in the remote display. I would say, though, that the Senate language, we think, gives us a little bit better language as it relates to the digital display network. And I think that's important because it was mentioned earlier, the Tesla fast chargers do not have displays on them. But all the information that is required in both SB 146 and HB 406 is displayed both on the app and in the display in the car. So either would be appreciated, but I think we would slightly prefer the more detailed language.
It's fine.
Thank you.
All right. Number 26, Representative Parsons, or Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask you, apparently from the presentation, Georgia Power has identified what they consider to be unserved areas in the state is where they want to put their own charging stations where they get cost recovery for. So I would suppose that Tesla must get requests from around the state, from places, from communities, from local governments, communities, whoever, asking for Tesla to put charging stations in those areas also. Is that true?
I think they do, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, you actually have two more questions, if you don't mind.
I was going to yield the well, but
All right. Let's see. Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Massey, in terms of the line of questioning that I was asking before, recognizing that some manufacturers offer incentives for free charging for a period of time, if this were to go into effect, which it will, the question is just when. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of your own planning for when that should come into place? Because it will be a shift of responsibility from no charge to a charge to Tesla if it was your client, of instead of now they're able to offer on their supercharger network free access. If they had to charge taxes, that would change their bottom line, I would think, right?
I would think so, and I'm a little unclear how that would work. I know I heard your question earlier to Leader Gooch. I'm not sure how the free charging would work. Tesla no longer sells cars that come with free charging for life as they did a few years ago, but there are obviously going to be some out there that have that provision and have that capability to charge for free. So I need to probably get a little bit more information in terms of how that would work, in terms of how the tax would then be collected and remitted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to take one more question, and I believe we're going to have to. How long do we have the room for? 1 hour? Is there another committee? There's nothing after this. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, you got two more.
Oh, great.
All right. Number 18, Representative Tran.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Massey, question about the destination chargers. Are they metered, and is Tesla still installing destination chargers? And then just kind of a side question, is Tesla still planning on doing automatic battery replacement stations?
I don't know about the second question. I think most of their destination chargers are metered, but in Georgia, at least recently, the most progress that they've made have been on the superchargers. Just opened another bank of superchargers in Peachtree City last week. And also opened 4 new service areas, by the way, service facilities in the metro Atlanta area. So most of what they're doing in Georgia is superchargers and not destination.
Thank you, sir.
All right. The final question is from the chair committee, so you're not getting out of this one.
My favorite Florida
Chairman
Gator.
Jones.
You can have whatever you want now. Hey. Oh, that's true.
It's a short list, by the way.
It is a very short list. We understand that. No, in all seriousness, what is Tesla's position, and maybe it doesn't have a public position yet, on when it'll hit, I'll say, 500 miles with its battery?
They're working toward it. You're talking about a time frame?
Yeah. Have they made a public proclamation that they expect 500 miles, and I'm
I
making
don't
this up, by
think that
2025?
they have an exact date. I know they're working toward that.
Sure.
Most of the S's now with the 100 battery can get close to 400. So my guess is it would be in the next couple of years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, actually, got one more for you. You're a very popular guy today. We'll do Representative Cox.
Thanks for taking this question. Currently, where are these chargers being manufactured by Tesla?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know. You know, they've moved the headquarters from California to Texas. That was a pretty high-profile move. And I had the chance this summer to tour the big facility they have there, which is 10 million square feet. And so My guess is they're manufacturing them there, but I don't know for absolute sure.
Okay, and a follow-up question. So one of the thoughts that I have relates to cybersecurity with EV, and I know that there's a lot of studies and thought on protecting these EV, anything as it relates to chips, but just making sure that we're protected in this bill, that could be handled as well. So I don't know if Leader Gooch, if that's something you want to look at as well, just to make sure that we're protecting the people that are driving the vehicles and getting charged. Cybersecurity, making sure that in the chargers as well as the chips and the batteries and everything going on with an EV, making sure that we're protecting the people that own these vehicles. I know that UNG went to speak in Tel Aviv at a cyber expo where their subject matter was EV and cybersecurity, and just want to make sure that we are protecting that interest at hand.
Okay, Mr.
Thank
Massey,
you.
sit down before I start blinking up here again. All right, at this time, we'll call Mark Woodall, please, with Sierra Club.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Woodall. I'm the legislative chair of the Sierra Club here in Georgia with 75,000 members, give or take. We certainly commend Leader Gooch and Chairman Jaspers on a very informative study committee, and I know the chairman was there and Chairman Parsons as well. The only one with a 700-page report that I've seen, that's for sure. And we commend the governor and his administration on the trying to make Georgia the e-mobility capital of the United States with over $21 billion in investment on the way. And we certainly understand even the Sierra Club supports getting enough money in here to maintain the roads and bridges. But we support Section 1 of the bill, but we think we really need to understand what we're doing before we move into these possible solutions. We heard several times during that study committee, including from the head of electrification for General Motors, that the problem right now is all these internal combustion engines that are more efficient. That's what's working on the DOT's money right now. I mean, we admit that EVs are going to be a problem someday, but certainly not by 2025. So we just suggest that we need to have that pilot project from the DOT and see what we got with EVs. We still think that the EVs are paying too much money into the DOT right now because, you know, back in 2015, I still haven't found that envelope where y'all figured that $200 out. But, I mean, that was just a guess. We don't think that EV drivers are driving as many miles. So, but we don't know. So we feel like we're jumping into a solution here until we understand the problem. As we brought up here, we got some of these destination or level 2 chargers around at hospitals, shopping centers, universities, schools, and it might be expensive to switch those to metering. So we don't know. We might actually lose a lot of chargers from this bill if we kick this in 2025. We've had, I think we only have 4 states now that have put in the commercial EV charging kilowatt per hour fee. Oklahoma's doesn't go in until 2024. Somebody else just went in 2023. So this is pretty new, and we think we need to take a look at it and get it right. And we commend the Senate version for adding multifamily homes. We think that's a good change. But we still got people with houses that have to park on the street. So I think we still got some equity issues there on how we would exclude people. And we prefer the EPA formula. I'm not sure why the Senate put that other formula in there, but we think the EPA formula is the way to go. So we just urge you not to mess up a great thing here in Georgia and rush into a solution that may not be what exactly we want. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. The last person on our sign-up list was Doug, and please excuse me if I got this wrong. Is it Tepper? Teeper. Doug Teeper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Leader Gooch. My name is Doug Teeper, and I am the policy manager for Georgia Conservation Voters. I want to lead off by saying that I had the honor of serving in the Georgia House for 16 years, and I listened online and also attended a number of the study committees, and I have to say that it was probably the most impressive study committee in my experience at the legislature. Both chairmen did an excellent job, and the speakers who were invited and did presentations were excellent, and you raised just a whole range of issues. And it was a very impressive just deep dive into all the issues that are being raised. I want to commend the Senate version of the bill that has come out. I also agree that multifamily housing being included was a great add. The one big concern I would have, and it's something that was wrestled with quite a bit, is there are facilities that are offering free charging as a way of making people come into their convenience stores or shopping centers or hospitals or even hotels. I've noticed that at some hotels you go to, you're able to hook up. And I started asking questions around about how much it costs to replace a charging station that doesn't have a meter on it with one that does. And I think there is a significant cost at this time. It looks like the way the country is going, that the cost should drop significantly. The one other issue we want to raise is the fact that when you're trying to determine the translation from gasoline cents per dollar into kWh, kilowatt per hour, that math is way above my pay grade, and I did my best to try to figure it out. I'm looking forward to the Georgia Department of Transportation's pilot study to see if they can come up with some numbers. Otherwise, I want to just applaud the efforts of the study committee and as well as your committee for doing this. There are some holes in it, and the one other one I wanted to mention that I almost forgot was I watched the representative from the Georgia Department of Agriculture get up and explain that they're still looking into the kind of equipment they're going to need, and it's a challenge. I see where it's a little early for them to make any budget requests. At one point, I think she mentioned that the equipment was $50,000 a machine, and they would also have some kind of vehicle that would have to be a field vehicle, and that would be a challenge. So you all have your hands full. I applaud your efforts. And as Georgia leads the way in the transformation from internal combustion engines to electrification, you're going to have a whole range of these issues. But I want to thank you very much for your efforts.
Questions? Nope. Okay. We actually have our friend here who sat on the EV study committee. Would you mind, at my request, would you put in a couple comments? Because there's been some things I think you could address directly.
Sure, I'm happy to. Excuse me if I waddle around the room. Sure, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that there were a couple of comments made based on some testimony I've previously given. The department is excited about this program, and we're ready to move forward. There are a couple of logistical issues I think I've mentioned before to some of the attendees here. The metering devices, or the testing devices rather, are not commercially available to scale right now. So we're thinking that we can get, I don't know, I think we probably are estimating about 20. And each testing unit is about $50,000 a piece. Now, the logistical problems that we're running into is we have to pull a pretty heavy load off of the grid and run it through the testing device to get an accurate measure for kilowatt hour. Now, if you're just testing for like safety or if the power's on, you don't have to pull that much energy, but we're gonna have to pull a lot. And it's probably gonna be enough to charge a car battery. So then we have a battery that's full and we have nowhere to put the energy for the next test, so we got to go drive it around and empty it out, which doesn't seem like the best option. So what we're looking for are some developments in maybe load banking. I understand that there are some things out there, but they aren't commercially available to the scale that we need because it's going to be a lot of electricity. So we're kind of looking around. I don't know if this looks like we just have a giant battery on the back of a trailer behind a truck. We're not quite sure what it looks like yet because no one's done it. But we are certainly we're making estimates about how many inspectors we're going to need. We do know that for safety reasons, we need to have inspectors that do electricity and don't do gas, so that we're not bringing gasoline to every charging port. I'm sorry, I'm just talking. What would you like to know?
I think the specifics were with regards to the testing equipment for the charging.
Okay.
So, and I think you pretty much answered the question. There was one change. If I remember, the House bill had, was it 23 in it? Am I right? For that date?
Oh.
Yeah. And Senator Gooch, you pushed that out 2 years?
Commissioner Harper a little extra time.
Okay.
He's gonna need to get it right.
Okay. So I think we've tried to address this timeline once, and I hear testimony push it out again, but it sounds like we've already done that. So, thank you very much.
Okay,
and I
thank
appreciate you coming up here.
Last comments?
Absolutely.
Chairman? First, I wanted to just say that I appreciate the support from the people behind me and their testimony today. I said this from the beginning. This is the beginning of an evolution of a new energy and a new type car that's going to be on our roadway. So we know there's going to be changes in the future. We do look forward to the road usage charge that is being tested by GDOT. We believe that's probably the best policy. It may not be the best politics, but it's the best policy long term. But I'd like to go back to a comment for Chairman Parsons, because I know you're a little uneasy about the Georgia Power situation. One thing I did not tell you earlier about their community charging program that the PSC approved, this again is for 11 charging stations per year. They had to submit their list in advance to the PSC. So once they identify where their 11 chargers go for the year 2024, for example, every provider within a 15-mile radius of each of those locations has a right of refusal to put a charging station there first. So if no electric chargers are going in because of C-stores or restaurants, hotels, or any other public chargers, if none of the other providers want to put a charging station there, only then can Georgia Power put one in those areas, which basically is the last resort. I mean, they would be the last option that you would get in that area. So I don't think that you're going to see a lot of chargers being put in by Georgia Power. They're not interested in doing that in those Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties. A lot of providers won't put them there either. We're glad that Georgia Power is willing to step up and do that. Otherwise, a lot of people would not have access to the chargers. So I just wanted to try to help make you at ease a little bit there, because they're not out there trying to compete with the other providers. They are providing it basically as a last resort.
Okay, so I'm going to open this up. Any final comments from anybody? I'm going to wrap this up here real fast. I wanted to, again, thank you, Senator Gooch, for bringing this bill and all the hard work that you put in for our study committee over the summer. I think the two things that we need to make sure that we continue to focus on is, one, that we can allow fuel choice to be available to every Georgian. And I talk about that a lot. That means electricity. I would like to bring hydrogen into it. Sure. But also gasoline, and we continue that policy going forward. Additionally, I think that this bill addresses the fact that we want all Georgians to pay their fair share for the time that they spend on the road, and I think you've captured that in this as well. So I appreciate you bringing it. I'm going to let you have final comment.
One last thing I did not mention earlier, and you know this as well, I think most of your members do. The federal government gave the state of Georgia $135 million this year to deploy charging stations throughout the state. And so that plan has been submitted to the Federal Highway Department by the planning director at GDOT, Janine Miller. Once that plan's approved, which I think it has been, then there'll be a RFP put out, and there'll be people putting in bids and proposals to spend that $135 million plus monies to distribute these charging stations around the state. And there are strict guidelines on where those are going to be put. So we are going to have thousands of charging stations put in the next multiple years. So it's coming. We need to be preparing for it. We can't wait to 2028 or 30. We need to do it now. And if we have to make adjustments next year, we'll come back and do that as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And if there are no more further questions, which we're going to go ahead and stand